Hello, I'm Lloyd Rieber, and I'm here to demonstrate how to build a simple live code project that involves some computer programming. The goal of this demonstration is to introduce people who have never programmed before to coding within LiveCode. I believe that everyone can learn to code. Remember, the power of computer programming is that if you can imagine it, you can build it. By following this video, you should be able to build this project yourself, but I suggest you watch the video at least once all the way through before launching LiveCode and trying it yourself. Let's start with a short demonstration of the final project. Everyone loves Mad Libs. The idea behind a Mad Lib is that you build a list of adjectives, nouns, verbs, and adverbs, and any other parts of speech or language forms you want, then choose a random word from each group to make a made-up sentence. So here I have an example of the LiveCode project we will build. Let's see how it works. So I'm going to go up here and run the program, and as you can see, we have these different columns of adjectives, nouns, verbs, and adverbs. When I click create a sentence, what it does is it takes one word from each of the four columns. Now I did add the word the, and I added a period at the end as well. So the big football skips slowly. How about another one? The tall woman hurries quickly. Or the short football hurries quickly. The big dog hurries quickly. The tall dog runs quickly, and so on. And if I want to add some words over here, let's go to adverbs. Hastily, sadly, let's just add those two. Let's run this again and see if any of those new words come into play here. The tall dog hurries deliberately. The blue dog hurries hastily. And I'll just keep going through. There we go. The little chair jumps sadly. Oh, that's rather profound. Okay, so how did I build this? Well, let's go ahead and build this project from scratch. Okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is remove this particular file, the sample file, from memory. So now there is nothing in LiveCode's memory. Let's go ahead and create a new file. In LiveCode, files are called stacks because it uses the metaphor of a stack of cards. So let's make a new main stack. And it creates a card there with this default size. We're going to size this up according to the classic size for an iPhone. So I'm going to go up to Object and choose to see the Stack Inspector. Now the Stack Inspector has all kinds of different ways for us to manipulate what the stack properties are, colors, and so forth. What I want to do is change the size and position of the stack. I want to make the width 480, and I want to make the height 320. I'll just hit the tab key to move from field to field. All right, very good. I'll just put that over there. And let's start by making a little title card just so people come to our file and say, oh, this is all about Mad Libs. So I'm going to bring in a scrolling field from my tools palette. Just drag it in there. And it changes the palette, or rather the inspector, to the field, whatever object is chosen. So if I deselect that, you'll see it goes back to the stack. If I double click here in this neutral zone, you'll see that the inspector changes to the card inspector. I click on the field again, it changes to the field inspector. So it's very important to make sure that you know what object you are inspecting. So for the field, I am going to go up to Basic Properties, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn off that vertical scroll bar for right now. And I'm also I'm just going to put a little title in there in just a second. And to do that, we have to run the program in order to put in some text. And we'll be talking more about how to run versus edit. But these two arrows here, they are the key. I am now in edit mode. When I'm in edit mode, I can change properties and so forth. When I am in run mode, well, I run the program. And the way this field is set up, you have to run it in order to actually do some typing into it. There's a lot of ways of getting text into a field, but I find this to be the most convenient. So how about I just type, welcome to Mad Libs, exclamation point. Great. And I'm going to make that be a little larger and centered. So go back to edit mode by clicking on that arrow. Going back now, I need to click on the field, and I'm going to go ahead and change the text formatting a little bit here to, let's just change the font to something big. That's a little better, and make the alignment centered. And I can see the text doesn't quite fit anymore. I can just take these little handles and do that, but I think something like that would be fine. Okay, so great. And now what I want to do is make a new card that is going to have the Mad Lib game on it. So if I go up to Object, I can come down to New Card. A stack of cards is the metaphor that LiveCode uses, just like PowerPoint uses slides. It's this idea of a single page. So get used to the idea of talking in terms of cards and stacks. So if I make a new card, it always puts the new card after the card I'm looking at. All right, great. So here we have our second card, and let's go ahead and bring in some fields now to start to build our Mad Lib program. So there's one right there. And now I am going to be kind of careful to start naming things. I wasn't too concerned about naming that title field, but I do need to be careful that I name things carefully now, because when I start to do some coding, I will be referring to these fields by their names. The first field I'm going to call adjectives. Now I could take this field and do the traditional or time-honored approach of copying objects and pasting the objects. So there I have a second field, and of course it's also called adjectives, but I'm going to call this second one nouns. Just hit the tab key there to accept that entry, and I'll just keep doing that. Now let me paste twice, and you'll see I'll just do it one more time. Okay, so again, this one is adjectives, this one is nouns, but this one, because it's a paste, is also adjectives. So I'm going to change that title or the name of this field to verbs. Hit the tab key, and the last one, adverbs. Hit the tab key. Now I need one more, well, actually I need a couple of more fields, but one field for sure I need is the one down below here. Use a handle to expand it out. And I'm going to call this one simply my sentence. All right. And again, you have some liberty in how you name these things. I'm just going to keep it simple with one word. Okay, great. Now this particular field, I don't think I want that vertical scroll bar, so I'll go again to the basic properties of this field, and I'm going to go ahead and click to turn that off. Now it would also be nice to know, what these fields are to the casual user. So I'm going to go ahead and bring another text field up here, and I'm just going to bring it like so, and I'm going to turn off that vertical scroll bar, and I think I'll turn off the border as well. Now I want to put in the label adjectives so people know what that field is all about below it. So I'll go back to run mode and just type adjectives. And maybe it might be good to again go to text formatting. Whoop, I'm in the stack. I have to be careful. Click on that field. I need to go to edit mode. Click on that field. Now I can go in here, basic properties, go down to text formatting, and I'm just going to center that. All right, good. Maybe make it let me boldface it. All right, and let me take a handle and make it a little bit smaller. All right, that looks good. Let me just use the copy paste idea here. So I have that field selected. I'll choose copy, and I'll choose paste a total of 3 times. So I'll just bring this over to each of the 4. They look like columns. Of course, each one is a text field, and I will go into run mode now in order to change the titles accordingly. I know it's a little weird that I go into run mode to change or enter the names, but that's just the way it is with this particular field property. Now, I like to, if someone comes to this little project, they're going to go to the very first card, and then they will have to somehow make their way here. How are we going to do that? Well, what I can do is start to add some buttons. So I'm going to actually, under View, there's a wonderful little navigational panel right here, and these shortcuts are really handy. But I'm going to go first, which means go to the first card. Of course, I only have 2 cards, right? Now, I have this card and the second card, and you already can see it can get a little bit confusing of how many cards do I have. In fact, let me move my project up there in the corner, because I'm going to choose another tool that is really handy. I use this all the time. It's called the Application Browser. And what's nice about this tool is you can see visually all of the cards that you have. And if I double click on one of these 2 cards, I'll go to this second card here, you'll see that it takes me to the card in question. Now you notice that the name of the card is Card ID 1002 and Card ID 1006, and that's really not a very nice name for a card, so we're going to change the name of each of the cards. And there's a couple of ways of doing this, but the way I like to do it is to just go to the card in question, kind of double click in a neutral spot, and again the card inspector comes up. If I go up to basic properties, you'll see that there is the name of the card, and I'm going to change that to title and hit the tab to accept that. And let's go to View, and I'll just say Go Next. That's another way to get from card to card. And I will again double click in a neutral space here, and you see the card comes up, the card inspector. Make sure you're in basic properties, and I'll call this just Game. So the name of the card is Game. Now let's connect the title card with the game card. So I'm going to use the View option to go to the first card in the stack, and I want to add a button to this card. So let's go over here to our Tools palette, and I'm going to bring over a button. And you can see that I am in edit mode, of course. I have the button chosen, so I am in the button properties. And the name I'm going to give this button is, let's play Mad Libs! Exclamation point. And I'm going to make that button big enough to see that. Now, here comes our first bit of code. I want this card, of course, via this button, to go to the next card when the button is clicked. So how do I do that? Well, I have the button chosen. You can see I have the button properties there, but I'm going to go up to the toolbar, and there's a icon there called code. So whatever object is chosen, if I click on the code button, I'm going to open up a script window for that object. And you can see that I have a little bit of script already put in there automatically by LiveCode. It says on mouse up, end mouse up. Well, this is called a handler, which is, I think of it as a trigger, meaning what is going to trigger this particular code. Well, when the mouse is pressed and let go, it's the letting go of the mouse button that is going to be the trigger. So when the mouse button is up, that will trigger this particular bit of code. Now, what do we want this button to do? Well, if you think about it, I want it to go to the next card. And one of the wonderful things about LiveCode is many times if you just talk through or just speak the command that you want, you're probably writing the code either in its correct form or very close to its correct form. So the code is go to next card. You'll see this yellow. Yellow means that it hasn't been validated yet or checked to see if there's any problems with my code. If I click apply, you see that it goes to green. Now, what if I had a misspelling of some sort? So what if I forgot the T of next? If I click apply, watch what happens. It goes red to say there's a problem, and it points to the line where there's a problem, and it also tries down below here, let me bring it up a little bit, it tries to give you a little bit of an explanation of where the problem is. Here the key is it's at character 10, but I think I know what the problem is. add that T, hit apply, and if it's green, we have good valid code. All right, well, let's try this out. So in order to run the program, I go to the run mode, this arrow on the left, and if I click on this button, yes, it goes to the Mad Lib game card. Excellent. Now, before we go any further, I think we better save our project. It's always a good idea to save early and save often. So I need to go up to File, and I am going to choose Save As. Like any other application, the very first time you save, you use Save As so that you can give it a name and a destination. And as it turns out, I have a folder already to go here for my LiveCode projects. So instead of Untitled 1, let me give this a name, Mad Lib. And let's do a save. Okay, what's next? Well, I think we need to add some adjectives, nouns, verbs, and adverbs here so we can then begin to build our Mad Lib. So again, I want to make sure I'm in the run mode, and I'm going to put in a few adjectives. How about big, little, red, blue? Nouns, how about man, woman, chair? For verbs, how about walk, run, jump? And for adverbs, quickly, slowly. Okay, so we have a few words to begin with, and obviously we might want to add lots more words to this later, and that's going to be part of the fun, to be able to have a nice long list of each type here to be able to draw from. All right, so what is next? Well, we need to have a button, if you remember from the demonstration, that says to create a sentence. So let's go ahead and add a button, and I can see that we're running out of space here, so I think what I'm going to do is go back into edit mode, and like a lot of object-oriented environments, I can choose more than one object at a time. I'm just going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to do some fine-tune moving around here. All right, that's pretty good. I'll just click in a neutral spot now. Now let me bring in a button down below here, and I go into the button properties here, and I'm going to call this button Create a Sentence. Hit the Tab key, and you can see that the button name does change. Alright, so now we're ready to do the fun stuff. We want to be able to add some code or script to this particular button that will make our Mad Lib. So we want to go ahead and hit the code button up here in the main toolbar. And here's my scripting window. And by the way, you can see in this scripting window that I have tabs for the last button that I was scripting, and so as you create scripts for a variety of objects, you can go back and forth between them. It's very convenient, but we do want to be in the button Create a Sentence. Now what we are going to do is have a variable for each one of the parts of speech, and this is just going to do a very simple demonstration of the use of variables. And like the name suggests, the information in a variable will vary. Think of it as a container of information or a bucket of some information that can vary from moment to moment. And what is important in LiveCode is that there are two types of variables, global and local. And we are only going to be using global here. And I don't want to get into it right now. Let's just say, when in doubt in LiveCode, use a global variable. But it's very powerful that LiveCode has both types of variables. A key thing about a global variable, you have to declare it first. So I'm going to declare a bunch of variables that are going to contain those parts of speech. And I'm going to use a good strategy here, a good habit to get into, is to use some good naming conventions. So I'm going to use a little prefix var for variable to name this group of variables. So var adjective, var noun, var verb, and var adverb. And you can see I have a comma in between. So it is very important that we declare our global variables before we are able to use them as global variables. I guess the one way to think of a global variable, by the way, is that the word global gives you a little hint. You can use this variable anywhere in your program, and it's going to maintain or keep the current contents of that variable throughout the entire program. So when I need it, it's going to be there. All right, great. So we have that. But when I click the mouse up button, when I click the button and the mouse comes up, what do I want to have happen? Well, let's do a little demonstration here of beginning to build what will become a Mad Lib. But the first part is, you can imagine up here, I'm going to pull a word from the adjectives field, and I want it to appear down here in this field. So we're going to do something very simple first. Here's the first line of code that is not going to create a Mad Lib, but it's going to be a good start. So our first line of code is to put line 1 of field adjectives into the variable that we set up called var adjective. And now the second line of code is to put var adjective into line 1 of field my sentence. All right, let's hit the apply button. All right, looks like we have some good code there. Now let's go up to our program, go into run mode, and we are going to click create a sentence. Well, how about that? It took the first word and it now appears down here also. Excellent. Okay, we now will build on this. We want to do the very same thing for each of the other fields and each of the other variables. So I'm going to take that line, as you can see right there, and I am going to copy it. And I am now going to paste that line 3 times, putting a return after each one. And when you're in the code view, by the way, if you hit the tab key, it will line everything up very nice. It's very easy then to make it look clean. So I'm going to take or edit the second line where it says put line 1 of field. Well, now I'm going to use nouns into var noun. Next line I'm going to change to verbs, and the variable is called verb. And again, be sure that you have it spelled exactly right. And the final one, adverbs, and the variable adverb. Now, we are going to do something rather interesting in the next line. We want to have the combination of these words lining up one after the other. We are going to, in a sense, be combining or joining these 4 variables and the contents of those variables. Now, if you have ever played word math, if you know what I mean by things like mail plus box equals mailbox, if you've ever played that or know what I'm talking about, well, we can do something very similar in programming where we join or concatenate 2 or more strings, and instead of a plus sign we use an ampersand. So watch this. I'm going to come down here and use an ampersand and then var noun. Okay, and you should predict what we're going to get here. Let me go ahead and hit the apply button, come up here into my program. We are still in run mode. Let me click create a sentence. Big man. Okay, we took those 2 and put them together. Now I really want to have a space in between them. No problem. I can also add a space as I go. So this is going to be a very logical operation here. Right there, I'm going to be adding a space. So I have to have a ampersand in between each one of these chunks. So a space is simply a quote, space, I hit the space bar, another quote, and I have to have the ampersand to join that space with then var noun. Let's hit apply. Let's run it. Create a sentence. There you go. We have a space in between. So now we can really add the rest of what we need here. So for example, at the very beginning, I'm going to say put the. So I need to put the within quotes with a space after the E of the. So I put the text string within quotes and then the ampersand. And again, I'll hit apply, I'll hit create a sentence, and I start to see things are working out quite nicely. I think we can now add the rest of this. We are slow and methodical. So after the var noun, we're going to add a space. So quote space quote ampersand var verb ampersand quote space quote ampersand var adverb, and then we want a period. So we have a ampersand quote period quote. Click apply again. Green button. Good. Let's go up to here and click create a sentence. The big man walk quickly. So I know I need to make a change here. Let's change that walk to walks, and I guess I need to do the same thing for runs and jumps since we have a singular noun. Okay, let's come down to create a sentence again, and we see it works great. Now the fun part. If you can look down here now in our code, we don't want just line 1. We want a random word from that field, and that is what we're going to do next. Let's look again at this line right here. I think it's pretty clear that it's working, but every single time it puts line 1 of field adjectives into the variable var adjective. Well, line 1, of course, is big. I would like it to be any one of those words. I would like it to choose one of those 4 words at random. So it isn't line 1 that we want, it's one of those 4 lines at random. Well, so the number 1 needs to be replaced with something that's going to choose the random of something from 1 to 4. Well, it turns out that is simply this line random parentheses 4 parentheses. Let's hit the apply button, and let's see what happens now when I go up here and try this. The red man, the big man, the little man. And it is going to be at random, so every time I click it, there should be an equal chance of any one of those 4 words to be chosen. Well, that's a big improvement. And you might say, wow, Lloyd, let's just do that to the rest of the lines. Well, the trouble is, what if I decide to put in some other words, like pink, or handsome, or smart, whatever the case may be? Well, it still will only now pick these 4 words, or from among these 4 words. It would be great if I could choose from the number of words that happen to be there without having to keep going back and changing the 4 to a 5, 6, 7, or 8. So we're on the right track here. Part of it is that we don't know what number we want to put in there, but we know it needs to be a number equal to the number of lines in that field. Well, it turns out we can just script that in. So let me take out the 4 and put in instead the number of lines in field adjectives. Okay, let me see if this works. Let me hit the apply button. Seems like it must be valid code. Let's go up here and run this. And I think you can see that it's choosing all those different adjectives. Again, smart being the last one. So if I just add one more, how about proud? And now run it again. We can see that now that is being part of the list. So this is a pretty powerful thing that we have now. We now have a bit of code that is going to take into account whatever number of words happen to be in that field. So what I'm going to do now is do a copy paste. It's going to be the number 1 is going to be replaced with this. Of course, we're going to have to make a small change in each case. But let me go ahead now, and in case you missed it, I'll do it the long way. I'm going to choose copy. I like to use those keyboard shortcuts when I'm doing it by myself. So line 1, I'm just get rid of the 1 there. I'm going to now paste that in its place. Do the same thing for the next line. And finally the last line. And now I have to go back, of course, and change that to correspond to the field in question. Let's hit apply. Did I make any mistakes? No, it looks pretty good. Let's now go ahead and run the program again. So now you can see that all of the 4 words, they seem to be changing. And if I add another word, let's say skips, let's be on the lookout. Oh, it came up right away. Skips right there. Excellent. So it seems to be working very well. Well, let's be sure to go up to File and do a save to make sure that we don't lose any of our work should LiveCode or the machine happen to crash on us. Well, that's all there is to it. It's now your turn. Download your free version of LiveCode Community Edition and try building this little project for yourself. And look for other first project examples and tutorials on my website. Happy coding!